Wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassail bowl we'll drink to thee. So here is to Dobbin into his right eye. May God send our master a good Christmas pie, and a good Christmas pie as may we all see. With a wassail bowl we'll drink to thee. Well, welcome back again, friends, once more to a Scoundrels Alley Mailbag. And once again, we're here in beautiful Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where the friends of Fort Randolph have graciously agreed to once again let us use here at Hogg's Tavern after they shut off the water and all the heat. But we're grateful for them to be here anyway. It's after Thanksgiving now, and we've gotten permission from the parson. He said so in the pulpit himself.
That's
that
right.
We can now talk about Christmas.
That's right. It's legal.
Well, legalism once again. That's a different talk. Well, we wanted to take a moment and thank everybody once again for allowing us into your homes and to being part of our own Christmas celebrations. In fact, I wanted to thank each and every one of you by name, but the rest of the group thought that there was just too many people for me to name all 17 of you who follow our videos. But anyway, if you've already seen, and if you haven't, I urge you to go back and visit our gift to you, our own little video Christmas card that we've presented. In it, we did a song called Wassail. And we got to thinking, why don't we talk in this mailbag, instead of getting questions, which hopefully we'll get some more from you later, we just talk about some of the carols that we like. So we just thought about it. Very quickly, though, the wassail that you saw is an 18th century song. It's actually called the Gloucestershire Wassail. Now, a lot of you who are in the language, which is my interest, are going to say, but that's not how you pronounce it. You pronounce it wassail. Technically, it's actually pronounced Veshail, but that's going back a couple of centuries before. The song itself was Gloucestershire Wassail. It's called Wassail because, well, we're English-speaking people, so we change some layer words. But also as singers, we take a lot of liberties with how we shade certain words and certain vowels. So to make the song work out, it became Wassail. It was a song that was done by people like us at Christmas time, usually on Christmas Day. We would go around with a punch bowl and singing this song. The idea was we're going to stand outside your door and carol to you, but in truth what we're going to do is basically annoy you until you put something in our bowl. It's kind of the way that this would have worked. But when we got to talking about the songs that we all like, we all decided, we all had different ideas and different songs that we liked. In fact, Susan, I think you were going to talk about a song that you learned when you were in the 6th grade. In the 6th grade, she had to memorize this entire song. So you want to talk about that?
When I was in the 6th grade, I remember having to memorize the song Good King Wenceslas. And back then, the song seemed really long and a lot to memorize.
But now?
Just like now. But as we all know, the things you memorize when you're young tend to stick and roll around in your head. And this song always was a nice one to me. I enjoyed it. I liked the theme of the song. So I chose Good King Wenceslas. Good King Wenceslas was written by John Mason Neale in 1853. Now, John Mason Neale was a priest in the Church of England, and he had, at that time, radical ideas. And his main radical idea was that we should help the poor. So
sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds good to me. So he took that idea and ran with it, but the Church of England was not happy. So they sent him off to a parish that was on an island off of Africa, and that's where he spent most of his life. While there, on a priest's salary of, I believe, 27 pounds a year, he started a mission called the Sisterhood of St. Margaret. And the Sisterhood of St. Margaret was dedicated to feeding the poor, helping the orphans, and a ministry to the prostitutes. And that's what they did their entire time. So John Mason Neale was dedicated to the poor, and so it just seems right that he should be drawn to Good King Wenceslas, because Wenceslas, who died in 929, was also dedicated to the poor. He was not really a king. He was actually a duke, the Duke of Bohemia, and he was put into power at a young age when his father was assassinated. Or not assassinated, his father was killed during battle. So Wenceslas was put into power. He had a twin who was just a few minutes younger than him named Boleslas. And at an early age, Boleslas and his mother tried to assassinate Wenceslas. And in his kindness, Wenceslas instead of having them killed or imprisoned, he just banished them to another country, so they were gone. So throughout his young life, Wenceslas was known to go out on Christmas Eve especially, but all throughout the year, and take firewood, clothing, and food to the poor. He made it a point to talk to all of the people in his town, everywhere he went, to get to know them, especially on his way to chapel to pray. So Wenceslas was going to the chapel to pray one day when he discovered his brother at the chapel, and his brother's cronies had come to assassinate Wenceslas, and they succeeded. They stabbed him and he died at the age of 22. Boleslas was then racked with guilt and changed his wicked ways and became the saint, or the good person that Wenceslas was. So the story of Wenceslas is really carried on by Boleslas, and that's what we know more about, even though it started with Wenceslas. He sustained the legend that was started. Wenceslas was very much of a Santa Claus figure because he was known to go out on Christmas Eve and pass out these gifts to the poor. However, in the song, Mason Neal wrote it as being St. Stephen's Day, because that was something the English would have known was St. Stephen's Day, which is the day after Christmas, also known as Boxing Day, and because St. Stephen was a martyr in the Bible. So he wrote the legend in the song as it being St. Stephen's Day, but it really was on Christmas Eve that Wenceslas went out passing out gifts to the poor. So that is a brief history of good King Wenceslas, but the song ends with the words, "Ye who now will bless the poor shall yourselves find blessing," and I think that's something that we should all look at today at this Christmas season.
And that's from 6th grade.
6th grade.
Elementary school. It's amazing how much elementary school has entered. In fact, Frank, I think you went to school, elementary school, with the author of the song you were going to talk about, didn't you?
Yes, same author.
I think Carol told me that you knew him personally. Yeah.
We sat together at lunchtime.
That's right. Hung out at recess.
Must be true. The parson's wife told us that.
That's right.
That's the way it goes. Well, you mentioned John Mason Neal, and the song that I have is also translated by Neal, and it's "O Come Emmanuel." This is slightly older than I am. I know that I'm the most senior member of the group here and take the brunt of most of the jokes. This is a Latin hymn from the 12th century. And it remained a Latin hymn, if I understand correctly, up until the time that the John Mason Neal then did the translation about the mid 19th century, the mid 1800s. O Come Emmanuel was originally a medieval church liturgy, and it had seven verses, or seven antiphons that were used in the Vesper services the week leading up to Christmas. And so this was a part of their worship. The themes of each one of these verses, these antiphons, were wisdom, Emmanuel, Lord of might, the rod of Jesse, Dayspring, the key of David. These different antiphons, these seven antiphons, were put to a melody, and they would have been done as a chant or a plain song. They are, and I'm horrible with Latin, but I'm going to say it's O wisdom, O Adonai, which is the Hebrew word for God, O Radex Jesse, the stem or root of Jesse, O Clavis David, the key of David, O Orions, Dayspring, O Rex Gentilium, the king of the Gentiles, and O Emmanuel. And then put together, these words form an acronym, and that acronym, if you read it forward, is SARCORE. But if you reverse it, it says Ero Cross, which means I will be present tomorrow. And so this last antiphon, this last verse, O Emmanuel, would have been sung on Christmas Eve. So we know the words, and the words have been retranslated several times. But O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lowly exile here until the Son of God appear. And then the refrain that we know: Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
You know, one of the things about O come, Emmanuel that I found interesting in looking it up and reading about it was the fact that the refrain was actually added later. It did not contain a refrain when it was being used as a Latin chant as part of the Vespers leading up to Christmas. The refrain is actually an answer to the verse, where the verse is a pleading. Oh come, roots of David, we need you, we want you. And the refrain that was added much later says, rejoice, rejoice, shall come to thee. O Emmanuel shall come to thee. So it's an answer back to that, which I thought was fascinating. It's the only one of the Christmas carols that I saw that has a plea and then an answer back to it. So it's kind of a two-way conversation, which I think is really cool.
And then we have the 7 verses. Most of the folks that sing this hymn now, this Christmas carol now, are doing either 4 or 5. But it's fascinating to see all the way back, even to the 8th and 9th century. Although they're saying it's a 12th century hymn, we're seeing this that old. But Mason, again, being the translator of this, I don't think he gets the credit that he deserved. Living on 27 pounds per year is not much for the 19th century. It's not much for the 18th century, but it's definitely not very much.
Now, you said that Neil, it kind of goes back to her. You said that Neil used a Latin tune, a 12th century Latin hymn.
They are. It's a little confusing as I read the documentation. It's a little uncertain where the tune is coming from. Actually, I believe a French tune is what Neil put with it, an old French tune.
Well, most of the French tunes we found were Latin. The only reason I mention that is because I think you had found that Neil, when he did Good King Wenceslas, was using a Latin tune.
He was. Neil rewrote the tale to fit his song, but then he took a 13th century Latin melody and used for his song, and the Latin translation of this song is In Praise of Spring.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Latin stuff here.
There was one recent musicologist that has gone back and been able to find this French tune.
So we've got French and Latin. I wonder what the Irish were doing. Probably nothing good.
I'm sure.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know. Were they
Irish.
doing anything good, Carol?
Well, being that Maggie is Irish, of course, my interest goes back to Ireland and what kind of Irish Christmas carols we have. And I wanted to see what we had here today that could have come from Ireland to begin with. And I found one or two that I thought were interesting, that I find interesting. One is a Christmas carol that we don't sing very much. In fact, you don't hear it. You hear it only maybe in a concert or possibly in a Vespers, Christmas Eve service sung by a choir or by a soloist, but you very rarely see it sung in church as a group. And it's called the Wexford Carol. But we know it better probably by the first line, Good People All This Christmas Time. That's an alternate title for it. And it came from Enniscarthy in County Wexford, where it got its name. And it's one of the most popular, and they think probably the oldest Irish Christmas carol, dating back into the 12th century. And it tells the story, the Wexford Carol tells the story of Jesus and the Nativity. And that's what it's centered about. So it was usually sung in the Christmas Eve services like that. For centuries, what I found interesting about that particular carol is that it was only allowed to be sung by men. It was not allowed to be sung by women up until maybe 50 years ago. You never saw women singing it. They never were part of the group that were singing it. It could only be sung by men. And nobody really knows why. They don't know why that was entered into there. But it is a song that has been very popular here in the United States, although, like I said, we don't sing it in our churches. One that we do sing in our churches, though, that you probably are more familiar with, is the song "While Shepherds Watch Their Flocks by Night," all seated on the ground. We sing that one. A lot of times you hear the children sing that in the services and in the Christmas programs. The author's name was Nahum Tate, and he graduated from Trinity College in Dublin in 1672. The sad thing about him is that he really had a heart. He really wanted to be famous for writing poetry and verses to songs, but he just really wasn't that good. So he never got the fame that he thought that he should have, and he spent his life trying to be popular, and he just, well, the records of that period of time said he just didn't have the intellectual fortitude to be able to compete with people like John Dryden, who he worked with a little bit. He was just constantly trying to get popular favor to his side, and he just didn't quite make it. But nevertheless, even though he wasn't of that caliber, he was appointed the Irish Poet Laureate in 1692 and the Royal Historiographer in 1702. What he was good at was taking what somebody else had written and redoing it and making it a little bit better. And he's known primarily for rewriting Shakespeare's King Lear and changing the ending. Unfortunately, that's what he's somewhat famous for. He also redid the Psalms of David from the Bible, and he's known fairly much for that. But being that he never quite achieved the fame that he wanted, he was poverty-stricken for the most of his life, and he actually died hiding from his creditors at the end of his life because of the great debt that he was in. So,
like Scoundrels.
Yeah.
So he fits real well with our group, although he was trying to raise himself out of that.
So are we.
So,
right.
So as we sing "While Shepherds Watch Their Flock," you might think about poor Nahum, and remember that he was a man who wanted attention, and he didn't get it the way he wanted it. So. But anyways, those are the two that I thought you would be familiar with. There are other Irish Christmas carols that are very familiar and very popular in Ireland that have never made it over here. A lot of the older Irish carols are written in Gaelic and have not been changed and translated to be sung in English. And so they never made it across the pond. So even though they're beautiful, we don't sing them over here.
That's it. Later on, we're going to talk about "While Shepherds Watch Their Flock by Night" because I actually know that as a German carol. So I probably the music. I mean, I know as a German carol. We should look into that
and see what it is.
Which carol sang first, the Irish, or the Germans?
Well, since he was from Dublin and he said he wrote it, I guess we'll give him credit for it.
Well, I'm just thinking of the music. I guess
music-wise, I don't know because he was a poet.
Because I know the very dramatic beat of one version, and of course I know this version as well. I never thought of put it together.
To which one it is, yeah. One of the things that I found really interesting about the Wexford Carol is that most of the Irish Christmas Carol were written in Gaelic and then translated over for us to sing in English. But the Wexford Carol was written in English. It was not written in Irish, and it actually has been translated backwards so that now they have Irish words to it, but the original words were English.
Do you know when that was done? Do you know when the Wexford Carol was written?
Well, the Wexford Carol was written in the 12th century.
In English? Not in English. Really?
Mm-hmm, that's what it says. It was written in English, not in Irish Gaelic.
Now I'm piqued. My interest is piqued even more.
I'll
be looking that one up myself.
I feel another mailbag coming on.
I think it's because the gentleman who wrote the Wexford Carol actually was a... I wanted to say he's an archbishop, but that's not. He was not an archbishop, but he was someone very educated, very well educated in the church. So,
I mean, a lot of things make me curious. I guess music background, but language. I love language, and that's just that jumped out at me. And that's why I chose the hymns that I chose, because quite frankly, who can have Christmas without singing "Hark How All the Welkin Ring"? I mean, you got to admit that's a song we've all.
Wait! I don't think that's how it goes exactly, is it?
Hark how all the welkin ring.
I think it's angels sing, right?
Oh, you're of that school. Oh, I see. All right. Now begin to see a difference. When Charles Wesley, who is a prolific hymn writer, you've heard all about him. If you watch the Parson sermons, especially, he'll mention him a lot. Very brilliant man. In 1737, he wrote "Hark How All the Welkin Ring."
Wow.
That's right.
Because he was of that high intelligence. Now, Charles Wesley, I must say, he wrote about 3,000 hymns, and you're very familiar with, believe it or not, you're very familiar with them. Jesus Christ is Born Today, Love Divine, I Love Excelling, which we need to do for church one of these days.
Jesus, lover of my soul.
Right. So he wrote, Hark, How All the Welkin Ring. Well, the problem is we have no idea what welkin means today. The word welkin means today. Welkin means today. It actually means the halls of heaven. So hark how all the welkins ring.
Charles Wesley would very often, in the middle of his written sermons, jump into Latin and or Greek without giving a translation to it.
Well, he expected his people to know.
Yeah,
Right.
Now, because I noticed that our parson oftentimes lapses into things we have no idea what he's talking about, but we just accept it. The thing that happened, though, is oftentimes Charles Wesley had a friend, but it was a friend with an odd relationship named of Whitefield, who was very, very passionate, but not as educated, we might say.
A little more theatrical.
That's a good way of putting it.
Well,
Dramatic.
He grew up with a theater background.
All right, and I think Whitefield was a lot of the reason that our version of revival over here started in America, if I'm not mistaken. But Whitefield would take a lot of Wesley's songs and publish them, sometimes without Wesley's permission. And he did this in this case, but he didn't feel that the common person had any idea what a welkin was, so he changed the name to Hark, the Herald Angels Sing, for those lesser educated, such as the Irish, so that they would be able to sing it as well. When we read back that, this got Charles Wesley very, very upset because he did not think this was theologically sound. Because Wesley's argument was there's nowhere in Scripture that the angels ever sang. Now, of course, immediately we go to Luke 2, where, and suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts glorifying God and singing.
No, saying.
Saying.
And that was just it. It's the word saying that they use, not singing. But because of what Whitefield did to Wesley's tune, we now immediately think of angels singing everywhere. Now, granted, if we look back at history, Azusa in the 12th century, when he writes Good Christian Men Rejoices, he writes it because he has a dream one night, and he has a dream that he's taken into heaven, and the angels are singing and dancing to this song and this tune. So there's, some theological argument whether angels sing in heaven or not, we don't know. What we do know is humans have been given the beautiful gift of singing and praising God with our voices. So that's very important. And that just strikes me as interesting, though, again, the language, how the language changes. The other one that I find fascinating, and you might have picked up on it in our Christmas video when I wished everybody a mighty Christmas, and that was God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen is about 500 years old. It got very, very famous in the latter part of the 19th century, actually because of Charles Dickens. Because when he wrote the Christmas Carol, that was one of the songs that he mentions. It piques everybody's interest, and all of a sudden everybody wants to sing God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. But it doesn't translate quite the way we think of today, because when we look at the 15th century, there are two very specific words in this that changes the entire meaning of the song. And the first one was merry. The term merry in the 15th century, when you think of Robin Hood and his merry band, a merry ruler, merry song, a merry singer, it didn't mean happy, joyful. It meant mighty. It meant strong. So it was Robin Hood and his mighty men. It was a mighty ruler, a mighty singer. So actually, when we look at the God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, it's God Rest Ye Mighty Gentlemen. Mighty gentlemen. And then the word rest. Of course, when we think of rest, take a nap, we're all good. Again, in the 15th century, the language is a bit different, and rest meant keep or protect. So it's a plea to God, protect these mighty gentlemen. And he's going to protect them, as we see all in the song, because of sending his son. That's where the protection comes from. So, God, keep you, mighty gentlemen, because there is a comma that we're missing there. And that's the whole crux of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. And the reason that we say Merry Christmas today, it's actually Mighty Christmas, because it's a strong, glorious time. And in the song God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, God keep you, mighty gentlemen, so you can fight the good fight. And we're sending Christ, our Savior, to lift you up and make sure that we can just have that glorious time, knowing our Savior is here and come with us. I mentioned Good Christian Men Rejoice, and I wanted to bring it up because of Susa and his dream in the 12th century, but I guess in light of what Frank talked about and what Susan talked about, Good Christian Men Rejoice was brought out of obscurity, and the tune was placed the way it was because of
John Mason Neal.
John Mason Neal.
So we're back to John Mason Neal. If you're more interested in these people, again, we urge you to look up the history of Charles Wesley, of John Mason Neal, of Susa himself. These were all people who were very, very influential in our Christmas carols today, and they're dating them back to the 12th century. If you're interested in more, quite frankly, we've got Christmas carols that we know of, 8th century, 5th century. We've got one Christmas carol that some musicologists that we sing today believe that part of it dates back to the 1st century. And I'm not going to tell you which one it is. Either you're going to have to look it up or you're going to have to ask. Well, I think that's about all for me.
That's it.
That's
it for me.
Lots of information.
Well,
That's a
folks,
wrap.
we ask you to have a good Christmas, a joyous Christmas, a mighty Christmas. And we will see you as soon as you ask us some more questions. And if you don't ask us some more questions, I'll just make some up for you. Have a good time, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Merry Christmas. Mighty Christmas.
From our house to yours, from Scoundrels Alley, we wish you a mighty Christmas.
A happy Christmas.
Nolig Shinadwich. Joyous Noel.
And I need some.
And that's
I
a
really
right.
want
Not
some.
just
Hey,
where's
where's all
over
the
here?
Where's
Where's the
the
fruit?
Over here. Some of that.
Yeah, my socks aren't dry yet.